Hello everyone and welcome to lesson number 6. Today we are going to talk about one of the most important agile practices, which is retrospective. So let's quickly take a look at what all are we going to cover in this lesson. First one, we'll talk about what is retrospective. Then we will talk about when is it done during the project, how to conduct a retrospective, not just conceptual understanding but also a practical guide to actually conducting and facilitating a retrospective, why retrospectives are important and what is their role in overall agile project. Then we will talk a little bit about the mindset when you're solving problems related to retrospectives. You can call them exam tips and then one practice question to put everything in perspective. And then I have added one additional topic to it, which is not really or directly related to retrospective, which is Agile Team Charter. It's a small topic, so I'm putting it in this lesson. All right, so let's get started. As I said already, retrospective is one of the most important agile practices. It's not me who's saying that, it's written in PMI Agile Practices Guide also. Why? Because it allows the team to learn, improve, and adapt in the process, which is very important in any agile project. A retrospective is a collaborative meeting where the team evaluates their work and identifies areas of improvement. So it's a continuous improvement mechanism or practice for the team. Now, it's very important to look back at the principles. If you remember in chapter number 2, we talked about agile principles and the 12th principle, which says at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. This is the principle which is driving the practice, which is retrospective. So, this is what we are going to do by retrospectives. Retrospective, the word means looking back. So we look back at the work that we have done and we find out areas of improvement in future. When is it done? Now it's a very important question. Typically in an agile project, retrospectives are done towards the end or at the end of each iteration or sprint after the sprint review. So in sprint review, if you remember it from the previous lesson, uh, we demonstrate the product or completed features to the stakeholders and we collect feedback. Now, based on that feedback that we have collected, we will discuss how the team did, what was the performance in retrospective, so that we can find ways to improve or work on that feedback. So it is done typically after the sprint review towards the end of the sprint. However, teams in flow-based agile can also do it when there are some few weeks that have passed and the team feels the need. They can also do it, third point that you're seeing here, when the team appears to be stuck, there is some problem which is not getting resolved, and if the team feels that a retrospective needs to be done, they can do it. Okay, now the most important part, the how a retrospective is done. So let's take a look. There are 4 prompt questions which we ask during the retrospective. Now, the questions, the verbiage may vary as per the teams, but the spirit remains the same. So, first we talk about what went well. What were the good parts of the sprint? What did we achieve? What didn't go well? Acknowledge any challenges, blockers, frustrations, or any negative feedback that we received from the stakeholders. What didn't go well? So we are just gathering data by asking these 2 questions. Then what ideas do we have? Then we brainstorm with the team that how can we deal with this negative feedback or how can we deal with these blockers? And then last and the most important part, what can be improved? What are the action items? Because if this discussion is not resulting in any action items, then there is no point doing the discussion. So there should be actionable insights as a result of retrospective. So these are the 4 things that we typically usually ask in a retrospective. What went well? What didn't go well? What ideas do you have? What can be improved? Okay, this is a template that I have made. I made it in Mural. This just gives an idea as to how can you virtually conduct retrospective. We'll come back to it when we talk about the practical approach of doing a retrospective. So if you are the project manager, scrum master, you have to facilitate a retrospective, what will you do? There are 4 steps to do it. First one, set the stage. Basically prepare for the retrospective. First of all, define the objective of the retrospective. What are we trying to achieve? Is there a specific topic or just improve teamwork? Do we want to work on some inefficiencies that we are following? The team is not progress, the work is not progressing as expected. What is the matter? What is the objective? The generic objective is just to look back at the work and find areas of improvement. The second one is use collaboration tools. If you're in a physical space with your team, then you can use a whiteboard. Then there are other tools like Miro, Mural. Mural is what I prefer, or just sticky notes on a whiteboard for hybrid or remote teams. Then what do you do? Once you have done the preparation, you gather data. Acknowledge any challenges, blockers, frustrations encountered. Review sprint outcomes, and when we talk about agile measurements, we look at velocity, defect rates, story points completed, all those things. So what is the data? What is the metrics that you have gathered for that sprint? You gather it so that there can be discussion about it. Prepare prompts or themes such as what went well, what didn't go well, the same framework that I told you. Now, there are some other frameworks like mad, glad, sad. What are you mad about? What are you sad about? There can be different ways of asking the same questions, but as I said, the spirit remains the same. Now comes the point of actually having the retrospective meeting, and the template that I was showing. Such templates can be used for actually conducting the discussion. So start with an icebreaker or team check-in to encourage participation. That's a basic rule or basic guideline recommended way of starting any workshop, that you do an icebreaker or just team check-in. There are different ways to do it. So this is how you start. Then you set time limit, which is very important. If you have like 4 questions, you set time limit for brainstorming under those 4 sections. Encourage every team member to share insights. There should be a collective contribution. It shouldn't be like just one person talking. So the facilitator needs to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak. Then focus on actionable items, not just observations. Retrospective should not be a meeting just to vent out or rant about what you didn't like, but it should result in actionable items. And lastly, create action items and close the retrospective. Assign ownership. Okay, so as per our discussion, these are the 4 actions that we need to take, and uh, person A from the team is going to do this task, person 2 is going to do this task, so that we know who is taking care of which responsibility. So accountability needs to be there. So assign ownership and deadlines for each improvement. Ensure action items are clear and measurable. They shouldn't be vague. They should be specific and clearly understood by the team. Recap the discussion and agreed upon action items. Acknowledge success and thank the team for their contribution. Remember the first question, what went well? That the whole point of doing that is to continue those good practices in the next sprint and also to acknowledge success as a team. Okay, what do we? All right. Now let's talk about why retrospectives are important. What is their role in the overall project? Retrospectives allow team to reflect on their work and identify areas of importance. We've discussed it so many times. Focus on learning and making small improvements. We learn about Kaizen approach, which is like incremental small improvements every day. So that is the idea, and not placing blame. Something went wrong. Who did it? It was whose fault was that? That should not be the theme of retrospectives. It should be focusing on the task and the improvements. Team analyzes both qualitative and quantitative data. So what is qualitative data, which is feelings? So we also talk about how the team is feeling, how are they overworked, what is going on. So that is also important. That is also done in retrospective, and we talk about the work data, work performance data also, which is quantitative aspects of the project. Action items are created to address root causes and make countermeasures. Many root cause analysis methodologies can also be a part of retrospective, such as the fishbone analysis, 5 why analysis. Teams can use that also to come to a root cause for complex problems and complex issues that they are facing. Now let's take a look at few things that you need to keep in mind, some do's and don'ts about retrospectives. You can also call it exam tips, because these points will come in handy when you're thinking about the solution of retrospective related questions. So the first one is retrospectives are for continuous improvement and are held at the end of each iteration typically. The focus is on improving and not assigning the blame. We just talked about it. Outcomes often include actionable improvements. They should include actionable improvements for next sprint. What needs to be done in the next sprint? Teams should limit the number of action items to avoid overwhelm and ensure focus. Team doesn't need to be overwhelmed with work, so it's not like you have 20 action items assigned for the next sprint, because there is some actual work, user stories assigned for that sprint also, that they will have to do. Don't worry about all these words, user stories and release and all those things. We will have separate section for this, separate lesson for all of that, but if you know about them already, you know what I mean. Improvements are selected based on priority and their success is measured. This is again very important. Everything needs to be measurable. This is the action we took as a part of our retrospective in the next sprint, and this is how its success will be measured. A facilitator helps guide the team in ranking and selecting actions for each for next iteration. There are some, if 10 action items are decided, they will be made a part of the next backlog. We will talk about backlog in the next chapter, but backlog is nothing but your to-do list. So they'll be made and a part of that and prioritized accordingly. Okay. What do we have next? We have this question just to give you an idea. In a retrospective meeting, the team identifies that frequent interruptions are causing delays in completing tasks. What should the agile team do next? So team is feeling that there are too many interruptions. Maybe some stakeholders are sending in requests, or I don't know, maybe some team issues are causing interruptions. There may be something, but what are we trying to do? We are trying to find solution for this problem. Now, what are the possible answers? Adjust the sprint backlog to accommodate interruptions. You can't just keep accommodating interruptions. Otherwise you'll have scope creep, which is going beyond your assigned scope, which is not advisable. Create a team rule to minimize interruptions during work hours. This is possible. Discuss the issue during next sprint review. No, because retrospective is the meeting where you need to discuss the issue. Escalate the problem to the product owner for resolution. It is not advisable to run to product owner for each and every problem. Agile teams are empowered, self-driven. They need to solve the problems themselves as far as possible. So what is the answer? Answer is B. Create a team rule to minimize interruptions during work hours. What is the rationale? Retrospectives focus on identifying issues and implementing actionable steps to improve team efficiency and processes. Whatever issue the team is facing, you will have to assign an action for that. Now we will move on to a separate topic, which is a small topic and not directly related to retrospective. if you have already covered the traditional or waterfall project methodology, you know that there is a project charter. The project starts, kicks off with a project charter. Now, what is the equivalent in Agile? So, there are two types of charters that we are talking about. One is your project charter, Agile charter. It is not as formal as it is in the traditional approach. Sometimes people use project tweet also. Project tweet is just describing project goal in 140 characters or less. I think the idea is behind a tweet, which is now called X. The character limit must be 140 characters in the beginning. I don't know how much is it now. So the idea is that you don't want to make it too text heavy. You just have a high level project vision and objectives in front of you in form of a charter. There is a second layer to it, which is team charter, and in some methodologies it is also called a social contract or team contract, which is nothing but team norms and working agreements. How will the team collaborate and work together? Includes values, ground rules, and group norms. How will the group behave? Key components of an agile charter, project vision, we talked about it. Who benefits? Now, again, we are talking about the project charter. Stakeholders and their gains, definition of done. We will talk about definition of done when we talk about user stories, which is nothing but at which condition the particular tasks or project will be considered complete or successful. Flow of work, how will the team collaborate? Now there is a concept of servant leader, and we will cover it a little bit more in detail. But the gist is that in Agile does not encourage micromanaging by the leaders, but they talk about servant leaders. The leaders are there not to direct and push work, but to be there as facilitators, removing blockers, and helping the team, serving the team to get the work done.